Hey everyone, welcome to Cybersecurity HQ's news roundup for November 11th, 2024. It's kind of a cybersecurity news deep dive like we always do. We've got a stack of recent articles. We're gonna pull out the important parts and kind of give you the bottom line. We've got a good mix today. Everything from targeted malware campaigns to vulnerabilities and machine learning toolkits to data breaches and fake emergency data requests. It's kind of a lot to cover. So
Yeah.
let's just jump right in.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. This first one is, well, kind of strange, apparently. If you're in Australia and you're searching for information about Bengal cats, you might be more likely to encounter malware.
Yeah, right.
Right.
It's pretty wild. This is Bootloader,
Oh,
and they're spreading it through SEO poisoning,
I
which
know.
is basically, attackers are manipulating search results to get their malicious links higher up. So you might be searching for, is it legal to own a Bengal cat in Australia? And you click on what looks like a legitimate site, but then boom, you've downloaded something nasty.
So what happens when someone clicks on one of these poisoned links?
Well, it's not like a direct download of malware. It's more of a process, a chain. What usually happens is you end up downloading a ZIP file. And inside that ZIP file, there's a JavaScript payload. And when that JavaScript runs, it kicks off a whole series of actions that ultimately lead to the execution of a PowerShell script. And that PowerShell script can then, collect system information. But more importantly, it can download additional malware.
And what kind of malware are we talking about here? What's the end goal?
Well, in this case, we've seen it lead to GoopKit,
Yeah.
which is an information stealing malware. And it also gives the attacker remote access to your system. So it's not good. What's interesting, though, is this isn't the first time Bootloader has used this tactic. Back in July, Cybereason found a very similar campaign, but they were targeting people searching for legal documents. So it seems like they're branching out, trying different lures, seeing what works best.
Wow. It's almost like they're A/B testing their malware campaigns, which is a little disturbing. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about machine learning. It's becoming increasingly integral to, well, everything, really. But it seems like there's a dark side to this tech boom.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Researchers recently uncovered a whole bunch of vulnerabilities in open source machine learning toolkits, like close to 24
All right.
across 15 different projects. And we're not talking about, you know, small bugs. These are some serious flaws that could have some pretty major consequences.
Okay. Help me understand this. What's the worst case scenario here?
Well, imagine an attacker gaining control of your entire machine learning pipeline. I mean, they could manipulate models, they could inject backdoors, even poison your data.
No.
And then suddenly your AI is working against you, and these vulnerabilities make that nightmare scenario a possibility.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. It really makes you appreciate how important security is in MLOps. Machine learning operations. It's not just about building these cool models, but it's also about protecting them.
Exactly. You need robust security measures in place right from the start. JFrog has been doing some interesting research in this area. They even created a framework called Mantis, specifically for LLM defense. But, it's an ongoing battle. We got to stay ahead of the curve.
While we're all marveling at, the latest and greatest AI developments, we also need to be asking the tough questions about how secure these systems really are.
Okay, let's move on to another threat that's making the rounds. This time, it's a fileless variant of the Remcos RAT malware. Can you break down what makes this one so tricky?
Sure. So what's interesting here is how this variant evades detection. We're seeing phishing emails disguised as purchase orders, and they have an Excel attachment. And if you open that attachment, it exploits a vulnerability. It's CVE 2017-0199 to download and execute an HTA file.
Okay, and what's so special about an HTA file? Well, it acts as a downloader, but it's heavily obfuscated, which means it's disguised to try to slip past your security tools. It's essentially a middleman. That fetches an executable from the attacker's server, and that executable then launches another obfuscated program, this time using PowerShell. And this program, it utilizes a technique called process hollowing to download and run the Remcos RAT directly in memory.
So no files actually touch the hard drive. That's how they make it fileless.
You got it. And because it's running solely in memory, traditional antivirus and security software often miss it.
So they've managed to sneak this Remcos RAT onto your system. What happens next?
Well, this is where it gets really scary. Remcos is a remote access Trojan, which means the attacker now has a backdoor into your system. So we're talking data theft, passwords, sensitive files, the whole works. They can control your computer remotely, run whatever commands they want. They can even turn on your webcam and microphone without you knowing.
Wow. It's like a digital spy taking up residence in your machine. Speaking of sneaky tactics, we've also got a story about DocuSign. You know, a platform that most people associate with legitimate business transactions.
Yeah. Attackers are exploiting the trust we place in DocuSign. They're creating real DocuSign accounts and then using them to send out fake invoices. We've seen cases where they're impersonating companies like Norton Antivirus, which most people would consider trustworthy.
So they're weaponizing a service that's known for its security and reliability. That's pretty bold.
It is, and it's effective because these invoices are coming from a legitimate DocuSign account. They often bypass security filters and land right in your inbox looking completely convincing.
It's a reminder that attackers are always looking for ways to exploit our trust and our familiarity. Okay, we've got a couple more quick hits to cover before we move on. One is about ZIP files. What's going on there?
So this one's about ZIP file concatenation, which basically means combining multiple ZIP files into one. The problem is that different programs handle these concatenated files differently, and that creates a vulnerability. Attackers can hide malware within these concatenated archives, and some security tools won't even notice it.
So it's like a digital Trojan horse hiding within a seemingly innocent ZIP file.
Exactly.
Okay, last one for now, and this one sounds like it's straight out of a spy thriller. We're talking about a threat actor known as VentureWolf.
Right. So VentureWolf has been targeting various sectors in Russia: manufacturing, construction, IT, telecommunications. They're using malware called MetaStealer, which is a derivative of the infamous Redline Stealer. And their goal is to, steal sensitive information, plain and simple.
So targeted attacks in a specific region, that's pretty classic espionage, but in the digital realm.
Yeah, exactly. And it highlights that these attacks are often highly focused, with specific victims in mind. It's not just random chaos. There's a strategy behind it.
Wow, well, that's enough to make anyone paranoid about checking their email. We've got plenty more to discuss, so stay tuned for part 2 of this cybersecurity news deep dive.
All right, welcome back. Let's keep going with this cybersecurity news. We were talking about targeted attacks, and this next one hits a little close to home for a lot of people. Healthcare.
Oh, yeah. This one's pretty unsettling. It involves patients of Presbyterian Health Care Services, and it all stems from a breach at their law firm, Thomson Coburn.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that you're only as strong as your weakest link. Right. So, Thomson Coburn, they discovered some unauthorized activity on their network back in May, and it turned out that files containing protected health information belonging to Presbyterian's patients were accessed.
Oh, that's scary. What kind of information are we talking about?
It's a whole shebang. Named social security numbers, dates of birth, medical record numbers, patient account numbers, prescription information, for treatment information, details about the medical provider's health insurance info. I mean, it's a complete identity theft package with a side of potential medical fraud.
So this wasn't just like a minor leak. How many people were affected?
So Thomson Coburn had to report this to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And the number is staggering. 305,088 individuals.
Wow, that's a massive breach. What's being done to help those affected?
Well, Thomson Coburn is doing the standard damage control, notifying individuals, offering credit monitoring and identity theft protection services. There's no evidence of the data being misused yet, but this kind of thing can have long-term repercussions.
It really highlights the ripple effect of data breaches. It's not just about the company that gets hacked, but it's everyone they're connected to. And it brings up a bigger point about due diligence. You really got to vet the security practices of any organization that's handling your sensitive data. All right, let's switch gears a bit and talk about some specific vulnerabilities that are making headlines. Veeam seems to be in the hot seat again.
Yeah, it seems that way. So they've got a new high-severity vulnerability in their backup enterprise manager. It's tracked as CVE 2024-40715. And it allows an attacker to bypass authentication remotely. So imagine, all your backup data, which is supposed to be your safety net, compromised.
It's adding insult to injury, considering they're still dealing with fallout from that previous vulnerability.
Right.
CVE 2024-407-1115.
Right.
It seems like they're playing whack-a-mole with these security flaws.
Well, it's true that they've had their share of vulnerabilities. It's important to remember that, software development is an ongoing process. New vulnerabilities are discovered all the time. The key is how quickly are they addressed? And in this case, Veeam has actually released a hotfix for Backup Enterprise Manager version 12.2.334. They've also included the fix in the latest repackaged images for Veeam Backup and Replication and Veeam Data Platform.
Okay, so the takeaway is update, update, update. Make sure you're running the latest versions to stay protected. Speaking of updates, or rather the lack thereof, um, there's a critical vulnerability in legacy D-Link NAS devices. This one sounds particularly nasty.
It is, yeah. This is a prime example of the risks associated with using outdated hardware. We're talking about a command injection vulnerability, CVE 2024-109-14. It's a flaw in how they handle user input during account creation, and it allows an attacker to inject and execute commands remotely. And the real kicker is that D-Link can't fix it.
Wait, why not?
Because these specific NAS models have reached their end of life. So no more security updates, no more support. They're essentially sitting ducks.
So anyone still using these devices is wide open to attack. What are their options?
Well, D-Link is urging users to retire these devices and move to supported models. If that's not possible immediately, U.S. users should at least be running the latest firmware. But even that's not a guarantee. It's a tough situation. It really underscores the importance of having a lifecycle management plan for your hardware. You can't just keep running old tech forever and expect it to be secure.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to a slightly different story. Palo Alto Networks has issued an advisory regarding some potential vulnerabilities in their PAN-OS firewall operating system.
Yeah, they're being cautious, which is a good thing. There have been some reports of a possible remote code execution vulnerability, while they haven't confirmed specifics or found evidence of active exploitation yet. They're urging customers to lock down access to the PAN-OS management interface, just in case.
So better safe than sorry.
Exactly. They're basically saying don't panic, but take this seriously. Restrict access to the management interface to trusted internal IPs only, and for heaven's sake, don't make it accessible from the internet. This is basic security hygiene. But it's amazing how often it's overlooked.
Good reminder. Now, we've got one more story to cover before we wrap up part 2. Ahold Delhaize, the parent company of Stop & Shop, has confirmed a cybersecurity issue affecting their U.S. stores.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a mystery still. They've been pretty tight-lipped about the details. We know that it's affecting pharmacy and e-commerce operations, but the exact nature of the attack and its full impact are still unclear.
So, more to come on this one as the investigation unfolds.
Yeah. They're working with external cybersecurity experts and law enforcement. It'll be interesting to see what they uncover.
It seems like every day brings a fresh wave of cyber threats, from targeted attacks to vulnerabilities in widely used software and hardware.
Absolutely. And this is just a snapshot of what's out there. It's a constant cat and mouse game. And we need to stay informed and vigilant to protect ourselves.
Stay tuned for part 3 of this deep dive, where we'll delve deeper into some more specific incidents and vulnerabilities. All right, welcome back to the final part of our cybersecurity news roundup. Let's wrap things up with a few more stories that highlight the gold. The diverse and ever-evolving threat landscape. Remember those legacy D-Link NAS devices we talked about earlier? The ones with the unpatchable vulnerability? Well, it turns out there's a bit more to the story.
Right. D-Link has actually released some additional guidance for users who are stuck with these vulnerable devices, particularly those outside the U.S. It seems like they're acknowledging that some users might be running third-party firmware on these devices.
Which is understandable given that these are end-of-life products and no longer receive official updates. So
yeah.
What's D-Link saying about these third-party firmware options?
Well, they're not exactly endorsing them. In fact, they're explicitly stating that using third-party firmware is not supported, and it'll void the device warranty. So they're essentially washing their hands of any responsibility if things go wrong.
That's a tough spot for users who might feel like they have no other choice. It really highlights the dilemma of legacy hardware. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place, risking either, a known vulnerability, or potential instability with unofficial solutions. It's a reminder that planning for hardware life cycles is crucial. You can't just kick the can down the road forever.
Absolutely. Security debt is a real thing, and it can come back to bite you. Okay, let's switch gears again. Remember that. Potential remote code execution vulnerability in Palo Alto Networks' PAN-OS firewall operating system. We've got an update on that.
Oh yeah, I was wondering what had become of that. Last we heard, they were urging users to secure access to the management interface, just as a precaution.
Right. Well, it seems they've completed their investigation, and they've issued a more detailed advisory. The good news is they haven't found any evidence that this vulnerability is being actively exploited in the wild.
Oh, that's a relief. So it was more of a hypothetical risk than an immediate threat.
That seems to be the case. However, they are still strongly recommending that users take steps to secure their PAN-OS management interface. They're emphasizing that this should be standard practice anyway, regardless of any specific vulnerability.
Which is a good reminder for all of us. Basic security hygiene is so important. Don't get complacent.
Okay, let's wrap things up with a final update on that cybersecurity issue affecting Ahold Delhaize, the parent company of Stop and Shop. They've been pretty tight-lipped about the details, but hopefully we've got some more information now.
Well, they finally released a more detailed statement, but it's still somewhat vague. They're confirming that they were indeed hit by a ransomware attack.
Ah, so that's what they were so hesitant to disclose. Ransomware attacks are never good news. What's the impact? Are their stores still affected?
They're saying that some stores are experiencing disruptions to self-checkout registers and other systems. They're working to restore full functionality as quickly as possible. They've also brought in some external cybersecurity experts, and they're cooperating with law enforcement. So it sounds like they're following the standard playbook. For ransomware incidents, let's hope they can recover swiftly and minimize the damage. This incident is a reminder that no organization is immune to cyber attacks. We need to be prepared for anything.
Absolutely. It's not a matter of if you'll be targeted, but when. That's why. Staying informed about the latest threats, adopting robust security practices, and having a solid incident response plan are all essential.
Well said. That's a wrap on our cybersecurity news roundup for today. We covered a lot of ground, from sneaky malware campaigns and hardware vulnerabilities to data breaches and ransomware attacks. It's a complex and ever-changing landscape, but hopefully you're feeling a bit more informed and equipped to navigate it.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about the threats out there, the better prepared you'll be to protect yourself and your organization.
And don't forget, Cybersecurity HQ is here to help you stay ahead of the curve. We've got a job board for those looking to break into the cybersecurity field, the latest news and in-depth reports to keep you informed, and a newsletter read by over 70,000 people weekly. Join the community and stay secure.